action. Welcome back, all you movie kings and queens, to the Real Gay Movie Show. I'm your host, Mike Lovins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan Provost.
Hey, everyone out there. How's it going?
Ryan, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm great. I'm just terrific. How are you, Mike?
I'm good. So, all right. So tonight we are going to be talking about A Wrinkle in Time, the new Disney movie directed by Ava DuVernay. But first, I'm going to shake things up a little bit and throw in some news in a new segment I'm calling the Newsreel.
Newsreel. We don't have theme music for it yet, so I'm just going to make sounds.
So, on March 8th, which was International Women's Day, Lucasfilm announced that another white male would be heading up a new Star Wars property. Jon Favreau has signed on to write and produce a new live-action TV series for Disney on their upcoming streaming service. Poor timing aside, I was excited about this news. Favreau is a huge Star Wars fan and already a valued member of the Disney family. So hopefully he'll open the door for women and people of color to direct and get their feet wet in the Star Wars universe. But what do you think about that?
I mean, I really love Jon Favreau and everything that he does. He directed the first Iron Man movie, which did a great job with that. He most recently did the new Jungle Book, right. And now he's doing The Lion King, which I'm really excited about. So I think he's made some really good choices. I think he's clearly really good at working within these big studio frameworks to make something that pleases mass audiences, but also is fun to look at, really smart. Not him personally, but his movies. I meant his movies. What he develops is always really smart, but also appeals to a mass audience. So I think it's a really good move on their part. We haven't seen him in the Star Wars universe yet. We've seen him in Marvel. We've seen him in some of the Disney cartoony kind of properties. We haven't seen this yet, so I'm really excited to see what he does.
Actually, he voiced a character on Rebels.
I'm not a Rebel watcher, so I don't know.
But he had nothing to do with the creative side of it. So, I think this is going to be a good move. My guess is he'll direct the first episode and then have directors come in from there. So, moving on to the next story, Armie Hammer confirms that he has been pitched to the idea for a sequel to Call Me By Your Name. It would be set around 1990 against the backdrop of the AIDS crisis and follow the former lovers around the world. So, what do you think? Could you use more Call Me By Your Name?
So maybe this time there's a mango or a papaya, some other fruit that we can see get penetrated.
I think they're going for a watermelon this time.
Okay. Whoa, go big or go home. It's going to be a whole group. It's going to be a group thing.
It's a watermelon gangbang.
Oh, that's what the movie's going to be called. Call Me By Your Name too. Watermelon Gangbang. I'd sign up to see that.
Yeah.
It's already been seeded. So there you go.
I got that one.
There you go. Okay, good.
All right. So the last story here is that Steven Spielberg surprised South by Southwest attendees on Sunday with a Q&A and a screening of his new movie Ready Player One. And from what I'm hearing, initial reactions have been positive. I know a couple of people personally who got into the screening.
Oh, really?
And they said it was fantastic.
Ooh, awesome. Good. I'm really looking forward to seeing that one. I can't wait to see it. Actually, going to see Wrinkle in Time, they had a new trailer for it that I thought was the best trailer they've had so far. And so that one's 2 weeks away, I think? Just a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Not very long.
The 29th or something like that.
Yeah. So we're really close to seeing this one. I'm so pumped to see Steven Spielberg do something in kind of a fantasy, fun, epic kind of world after doing The Post, doing this opposite side of things. So I'm really pumped to see this one.
Kind of getting back to the Steven Spielberg that I liked so much as a kid.
Yeah, the kind of magic and whimsy Steven Spielberg.
I thought it kind of interesting that he had John Williams score The Post and not Ready Player One.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would have liked him to do Ready Player One. Anyway, so moving on, we got a movie to talk about.
We do. We sure do.
We do. And so it is A Wrinkle in Time. And brief synopsis here. A young girl's scientist father has been missing for 4 years. 3 mystical beings called the Misses appear to her, her brother, and her would-be boyfriend, and tell her that her father is alive and in trouble. The 6 of them together take a journey through time and space to find Dad before he is lost forever to an evil entity known as the It. Spoiler alert, the It is not clowning around.
Oh, I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
So, Ryan, initially, what were you thinking before going into this movie?
I mean, fun fact, one night, me and a few queens also, went around space and time looking for a daddy of our dreams, and we didn't find ours, so it was a little different from this movie. But no, I mean, the trailers are really beautiful. I'm a big Ava DuVernay fan from seeing Selma. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you saw that one a couple years ago.
I didn't see it, but I know the premise.
It was really, really good, really well done. Very different from this. That was a historical drama about the civil rights movement. This is not that. This is based on the book from the 1960s that I knew nothing about. I knew nothing of this property. I just knew what I saw from the trailers. And seeing the trailer, seeing the cast, I mean, seeing Oprah that was in it, Reese Witherspoon, Mindy Kaling, Zach Galifianakis. Like, there are some really good stars in this one.
Chris Pine,
who's awesome, and I really like what I see him in. I really like seeing him in general. He's a very attractive looking man.
He ain't ugly.
Yeah, not at all. So I was really looking forward to this, and so this was I feel like the first really big release this year, unless I'm missing something, but this is really the first. Oh, Black Panther.
Black Panther. Yeah.
Idiot. I'm so stupid. But no, this was a really big release by Disney. And so I was really, really pumped for it. And so I was going to go see it. I was actually really looking forward to seeing this one, as opposed to what we saw last week, Red Sparrow, where, Red Sparrow, I probably wouldn't have seen had it not been for doing a podcast.
Right.
Whereas I was going to see Wrinkle in Time regardless. What about you?
So, yeah, again, like you, I did not read the book, so I knew very little about the story going into it, other than what we saw in the trailers. And I was very excited to see what Ava DuVernay did with a property like this. Her name was thrown around for Black Panther before it went to Ryan Coogler. And they've still been kind of talking to her, with her about the idea of her doing a Marvel movie and stuff like that. So after seeing that she, besides Selma, it looks like she's mostly done a lot of documentary films. Mm-hmm. So I was really curious to see what she would do then with a big budget and under the umbrella of Disney.
Yeah, for sure. And you don't see, as we just saw with the Oscars, you don't see a ton of women getting chances to direct big movies, definitely not women of color. And so excited to see a woman of color who has done some great work get the chance to do a really huge, big studio tentpole release kind of movie. Yeah. So that was really exciting, and I was really pumped for that, for sure.
So what were your initial reactions then coming out of it?
Well, so going in, I actually brought with me, I like to go to movies by myself a lot, but with this one, with it being kind of a more fun movie, I thought it'd be fun to bring someone. So I asked my neighbor, hey, do you want to come? And he was a little reluctant, but then I told him Oprah was in it, and he was like, oh, Oprah, yes, I'm coming. So we both went, and as soon as this one ended, we just kind of looked at each other and like, what just happened? Yeah. It was not great. Not great at all. Wrinkle in Time made me want to reclaim my time, if you know what I mean. Like, it was just very disappointing.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And it made me wonder, Disney has been kind of hitting him out of the park with the Marvel movies and the Lucasfilm movies. and they're live action remakes, but it kind of makes me think back to movies like Tomorrowland, and also how some of these the last Pirates movies have been and stuff like that. Kind of made me wonder if Disney kind of needs to rethink what they're doing when it comes to the live action movies that they're greenlighting.
What do you mean by that?
Just it feels like they're putting a lot of money into making spectacle instead of story. So I mean, I thought that the movie had it had good acting, good talent, but it felt like there was a poor script, poor dialogue. So let me ask you though about that. Do you think that that's the fault of the writers, or do you think that's the fault of the director?
I just think that there were a lot of poor choices made with this. I think that there's enough blame to go really around. I don't understand how someone saw this movie, any kind of cut of this movie, and thought they had something great on their hands. The one thing that was great was the visuals. I mean, and Disney knows how to make great, very visually appealing movies, right? So this movie is beautiful to look at, but as far as following any kind of plot, building any kind of characters, that just wasn't there at all. And there's just a lot of things that just took me out of this movie. And I kept asking myself questions as it was going along, like, wait, how did we get to this point? Yeah. Wait, why are we here? Why are we doing that? Why is this character acting this way? Does this character like this person, not like this person? I just didn't understand the dynamics that were going on at all.
Yeah. It's funny that when you mentioned, does this person like that person? So I took my 12-year-old daughter with me to see this movie because I was curious to get her thoughts on the movie.
So in your screening, were there a lot of kids? Was it primarily
a lot of kids?
Yeah, mine too. I felt like it was primarily families and kids.
To the point that I was getting really annoyed because there were kids running up and down
the
aisleways, and yeah, I was like, good thing you're not my kid.
So what did your daughter think?
So when I asked her after we came out of the movie and I asked her if she liked it, she was like, I kind of liked it. So she's the target audience, and she kind of liked it. Ironically, so she said that she was frustrated with the relationship between Calvin and Meg, and they're the two leads, if you will, as far as the kids go.
Yeah.
And she said that she could tell that they were supposed to like each other, but it didn't seem real, and that they totally should have kissed.
Yeah, well, no, I was wondering the whole time, like, I feel like Disney was struggling with, okay, so we have these two characters, we're trying to build chemistry between them, but are they too young to actually have it be romantic chemistry, right? Or should it be kind of, but they were clearly implying that there was some like romantic chemistry there because Calvin kept staring at Meg very creepily for many, many scenes in this movie. In fact, the very last scene where he's walking away from her, he's literally walking out of the house, staring at her the entire way. And then as he's outside the house, he's staring back in the window at her as he's walking away. It's like, you are the creepiest person in the world. So they were clearly trying to build it as a romantic connection, but didn't want to take it to that step. I think because the characters are so young.
Yeah.
Because they're about 12.
That I was going to say, I think they're probably, like 12 or 13.
Yeah. So that was super awkward. Like, either commit to that being the relationship you're going for. I mean, it doesn't have to be like they're making out, like maybe a little peck on the cheek, something 12-year-olds would do, or make it just a really close friend, like a nice friendship kind of relationship. But they were trying to make it both in some way.
It kind of felt like that they knew each other from school, but they weren't really all that great of friends to begin with. But then all of a sudden, it's kind of feeling like they're supposed to be building this romantic relationship.
Yeah, it was that was super awkward.
Yeah.
And felt very very forced for sure.
The movie seems like we said, the movie seems to be directed to a target audience of young teens and preteens or whatever. But I kind of thought too, like some of the dialogue was a bit over sciencey and spoken too quickly to understand. Wasn't really interesting to the younger or older people watching the movie. Did you get any of that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of sciencey concepts they tried to put into this movie to explain the whole notion of the wrinkle in time.
Right.
And that was something I was thinking about too. I felt like they clearly didn't want to make it too complicated so that it was easy to follow, which I'm fine with, right? In a science fiction movie, I don't need it to be something where Neil deGrasse Tyson will watch it and be like, that's brilliant, you know?
Right.
I'm fine with you being able to poke holes in it, but there has to be something clearly laid out for how whatever you're putting in your science fiction movie works, right? There has to be some sort of rules, some sort of clearly identified thing that makes whatever science fiction is happening possible. Mm-hmm. And I didn't understand at all what made this possible. You know, like they talked about the equations that they figured out, the couple, the parents figured out. They figured out these equations, but there was not really a machine or anything to describe how or why or under what circumstances they were able to move through time and space.
Yeah, well, and that was one of the things that really bothered me because they were talking about, they were calling it tessering or something like that.
Which sounds so dirty. You tesser real weird. Your tessering's off. You make a weird face whenever you tesser. Ooh. Like they said stuff like that in the movie. I was like, it was kind of laughing when they would say that. Like, oh, I kind of want to use that on someone. Like, oh boy, you Tess are weird.
But when Chris Pine's character, the dad, disappears, like without a machine or something, what is he doing to make this frequency that his body then can go through this thing? None of that was explained. All of a sudden, there's just the shimmering light and he can go through it. It didn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this whole setup, right? Okay. So dad goes missing for 4 years. Okay. Let's start there. 1. So he and his wife were colleagues.
Correct.
They worked together on this whole thing. So 4 years go by and they don't indicate at all that his wife, again, a colleague who helped put all this together, did anything to try to figure out where he went,
right?
Or try to go after him,
or indicate that she even had an idea that might be where he went.
Exactly. Like she seemed completely clueless. Like, oh, we're working on something that can transport someone throughout space and time. And all of a sudden, one day, her husband goes missing, and she's like, I don't know where he could have possibly gone. It's like he was just doing his work in the garage, and then he's not there. Well, okay, I think you probably know where he went, right?
Right.
But she shows no indication that she understands at all what happened to him. And then Meg goes to school and is getting bullied for 4 years because her dad disappeared. Like that seems...
How shitty are those kids?
It just seemed unrealistically cruel. Like kids can be really mean, but
it wasn't just the kids. The teachers were saying stuff behind the kids' back. The principal was a dick to her.
Yeah, everyone was like... So, it didn't seem like
grow up.
Exactly. It didn't seem like an authentic reaction to someone losing a parent.
Yeah.
Especially a child losing a parent. Like, she was getting treated like garbage because why? She was mourning the loss of her father, who she was super close with.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like there was a very authentic reaction to what her character was struggling with. And you're right, it was pretty much a get over it. Like, there was no mention of her going to a therapist.
Yeah,
there wasn't even a throwaway line like, you've
thing.
been in 4 years of therapy. You should be moving past this by now. Yeah. Like, there was no mention of how anyone has tried to help this poor child cope at all with the loss of her parent, which was very odd to me. Like, the whole setup was very weird.
Yeah, so they really just should have got that kid some help from the start.
Yeah. Okay, so another thing I was thinking. So a big selling point of this movie were the 3 misses. Right. They were very prominently featured in the trailers. So I was very much looking forward to who these characters were, what role they played. And I have one question coming out of the movie. who were the misses? Like, what were they? What was their... I know just as much about them coming out of this movie that I knew going into it.
Yeah.
They didn't really explain much about them at all. Who are these creatures? What are they?
Yeah, like I couldn't get that, whether or not, were they all from the same place? Were they celestial beings from different corners of the universe that have met up? Yeah, you're right. There was none of that explained.
Yeah, it was... I didn't know who they were. I didn't know what role they played. I didn't know what their powers allowed them to do or not do.
That could have been answered with one sentence from Oprah explaining who they are. Because
exactly.
The kids could have, they had to have been thinking the same thing we are right now. Who are you?
Exactly. And they just they didn't really describe who they are or anything. And that's just the thing, is they didn't take the time in this movie to describe what was going on, who these characters were, what drove the plot forward. Literally from plot point to plot point, it almost felt like characters would just say, okay, now we got to go do this.
Yeah.
But with no reason or anything behind it. It was just, let's go from point A to point B, and that was it.
Location,
right?
Location.
Exactly. Like, let's go from this beautiful place to this beautiful place without really talking about why.
Right.
And so I couldn't take you through this movie and tell you why they were in each of the spots they were. I don't know. And then some of the action in this movie just didn't seem to have any rhyme or reason behind it. So one big action set piece is, for some reason, Reese Witherspoon turns into a flying lettuce monster.
Yeah, what the hell?
And the three kids get on her back and they're flying for some reason. And then Calvin falls off of flying lettuce monster Reese Witherspoon and just starts falling. So Reese Witherspoon dives for him to save him, but can't get to him. But there's still no consequences because some flower creatures on the ground catch him. Like, yeah. It just seemed very Alice in Wonderland, like just kind of trippy, no rhyme or reason behind it. Just, this world exists to be strange.
Another Disney property that is all style and no substance.
I mean, I didn't make any kind of sense to me.
Yeah.
And that's what drove me crazy, is that, okay, why is this happening? Give me something. Tell me why we're doing this. Tell me why I should care about it. And I got none of that. Did you?
No. Well, and it's all like under the guise of, we think that your dad may have, we think your dad came here. How do you know that? Or what makes you think this is where he went? Like, even if that was the motivation for the places that they went to, they don't describe any of the reasons that they have for thinking that might be where he went.
Yeah, and they may have, but if they did, it was kind of a throwaway thing where they didn't really like bring you along. There wasn't a journey, right?
Yeah.
There was just, let's go from location to location and we'll figure it out along the way.
Well, and that the whole part where they're with Zach Galifianakis, none of that felt like it had any relevance whatsoever. Like, I felt like,
as opposed to any part of this movie that felt like...
I know. Yeah.
And let me ask you a question, Mike.
Okay.
Who was the villain of this movie?
A black cloud? That's a good question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
there was no true antagonist other than a black cloud or racing against time itself. I mean, who...
Yeah, I mean, so they kept calling it like the darkness and it almost seemed like they were just talking about the concept of evil itself.
Right.
But that is not a villain. That's not an antagonist. And if anyone should know great villains, it's Disney. Like,
yeah.
That's another spot where let's say someone's listening and they're like, but that's how it is in the book. Okay, great. Then Disney takes some liberties and create an actual personification of this villain to bring into the film. Because just having this ominous black cloud that really you never see do anything that intense didn't do anything for me. And so we're getting into some spoilery stuff. So if you have listened to this so far and you're like, I still want to see this movie, you should probably see it before we continue talking. So Charles Wallace is the really young brother. He's like, what, 5 or 6 years old, maybe?
Yeah, and he's the adopted brother.
Mm-hmm. And was he adopted?
Yeah.
Oh. Again, completely missed that. They did not build these characters much at all. Okay, cool. But there's a part towards the end in the third act where whatever this darkness or it is or whatever takes over Charles Wallace's body.
Yeah.
And
I was just
what
about
did you
to go
think
there.
about that?
Okay. So, yeah, it was just like 1 minute he's fine, and then all of a sudden the kid is evil. Like, what happened? Why is he now all of a sudden against his sister? You know, absolutely no clue as to what happened.
Well, and even beyond that, okay, child actors in general can struggle, right? And, you know, it's asking a lot when you have children leading your movie. And the 3 lead characters of this movie very much are the 3 children.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, the girl who played Meg and the boy who played Calvin did fine with what they were asked to do.
Yeah.
But the super young kid who plays Charles Wallace, which, by the way, terrible name. Awful name. The performance was just so over the top. Like, even before he turns evil, it's asking a lot. Like, there are moments where child actors can do really well, but you're asking a lot of a kid to carry a movie like this. So I'm not saying this to like take a crap on this little kid or anything. Right. I'm just saying that role was maybe too prominent to count on just a kid doing it. Mm-hmm. Like, instead of having this evil take over this little kid and that really be kind of the big bad at the end of the movie, I wish that there had been some sort of personification of evil. Maybe it created another form. Maybe it took over the dad's body. Maybe it took over Calvin. I don't know, but...
Well, it's funny. One of the things that my daughter and I were talking about was they introduced this bully character. What if they had like kind of manifested her in there to be, you know, a protagonist inside the it?
Maybe, because she certainly had nothing else interesting to do in this movie. But yeah, I don't know. It just that was a really weird turn in the third act of this movie that I didn't like. And just, yeah, Disney not being able to come up with a good, compelling villain in their movie is just something that they're usually able to execute really well, and did not get any of that out of this.
Yeah.
So really, really sad about that. So one thing I looked up in doing some research after this movie, because obviously anytime a big property comes out like this, you know exactly what the studio is thinking. Sequels.
Right.
So I looked up to see, Mike, this book has 4 sequels. 4. Oh my God, Mike. I can't do 4 more of these. So there's 4 sequels to A Wrinkle in Time, the book. A Wind in the Door, A Swiftly Tilting Planet, Many Waters, and An Acceptable Time. And I've read all of them now, and not the books, just the Wikipedia descriptions. And they are all weirder and make less sense than this movie did.
The good thing is I don't think the box office numbers for this movie are going to drive them to want to do sequel movies. Fingers crossed.
So apparently in the second one, Mr. Jenkins, the principal, plays a more critical, antagonistic kind of role.
Okay.
And I think it turns out that he's been like taken over by aliens or something like that. It's just, they're all so weird. Like, I felt like, so there's a local comedian who is really funny, and he tells a joke about how he and some of his comedian friends realized that anytime they would do acid, they would be laughing hysterically at all the things they said, but they would be so high they couldn't remember the next day. So one day they decided to get a notepad and drop a bunch of acid and then write down all the hilarious things so that they can turn it all into some comedy. And when they woke up the next day and looked at what they wrote, it was basically just like circles over and over and over again. And then the words ha, right? I feel like the creators of this movie or the writer of the book just dropped a bunch of acid and said, I have great ideas when I'm high and I'm going to create something magical out of this. Got super high and then just put this together. And this is what came out. It was just all these like magic flying lettuce monster and black cloud and red-eyed guy on a beach,
yeah.
offering a sand sandwich, right? Like, it's all these weird things. I felt like the only way I could have actually enjoyed this movie is if I had dropped some acid, had some Molly, done something,
right?
Like, and even then it would have been a little bit of a weird experience.
Well, it was the 60s when it was written, and maybe the editors were high too.
Apparently the author was like super Christian, and there's a lot of Christian undertones in this book. So I don't think it was that, because I was wondering the same thing. Like, maybe it was like the King of the Hippies who wrote this. But no, it was like apparently supposed to be there's maybe some like Christian allegory in it. I don't know. But it just, whew.
That went over my head then.
Very much so. Okay, I think I'm done with this one. Do we want to go to our takes?
All right, let's go ahead and move on now to our takes. So what is your gayest take for this movie?
I mean, no matter how terrible a movie is, Mike, if you throw Chris Pine in it, I'm going to be at least a little happy. And it was nice to see the daddy version of Chris Pine in this movie with a little like gray in his beard. Yeah, he's getting a little older, getting a little salt and pepper. Yeah, it was very sexy. I remember just a few years ago, he was a young, strapping Captain Kirk. And now he's, daddy, time traveler, time and space traveler daddy, so
getting his Tesser on.
He was tessering right in front of my face, Mike. It was kind of hot for a kid's movie, but yeah, so Chris Pine. Ugh.
All right, well,
what about you?
So for me, it was the misses, and I'll tell you why. I felt that they had kind of a bit of a drag queen look to them. I was even thinking, how bold of it would it have been for Disney if they had gotten drag queens to play those roles?
There's a version of this movie somewhere where that's the case.
Tesser, work. Tesser, work.
Actually, so in my alternative casting, here's my idea.
Okay.
I think for Mrs. Who, they should have cast Betty Who.
Okay.
To be Mrs. Who. It just makes sense.
Sure.
Okay, and also, grammatically, is it Mrs. Who or Mrs. Whom? Which one is grammatically correct? Wouldn't it be whom?
You would think so.
Right.
Yeah.
Because she's the object of the sentence or whatever. I don't know. Audience, y'all can correct me. But I was wondering, I was like, technically, grammatically, wouldn't it be Mrs. Whom? But I don't know, maybe not.
Well, and what's funny too is like, it took me a minute because I kept hearing Mrs. Witch, and I was like, oh, so she's like the keeper of the powers? Oh, it's Witch.
Right. And then is Mrs. Who married to Doctor Who? Like, is that how that works? I don't know.
Maybe. Is she from Whoville?
I promise I didn't drop any acid before filming this. Okay.
All right. Well, what's your shadiest take on this?
My shadiest take, here's the thing. One area where I think Ava went really wrong, the director in this, I don't know why we're on a first name basis, but one thing, there was some really awkward like music choices, like parts where something was happening and then they put in some music and it completely took me out of it. It was during some scenes where they're in some of these galactic, weird kind of places, but then the music was kind of soulful. And I just felt like the music I was hearing didn't match the visuals I was seeing. You know, I was expecting some kind of, I don't know, techno-y, kind of spacey, maybe like orchestra kind of music. And instead it was kind of a little soulful ballad that, I don't know. I was like, really, that's the music. I could get why that maybe that song is on the soundtrack, but I don't know why you're playing it in this part of the movie. It didn't really connect for me.
The music was almost my shadiest take, because there were times watching the movie where I would just hear a song that, like you, it felt out of place, and the first thing that went to my mind was, I need to look at the soundtrack to see if these are the next up and coming Disney Channel music artists that they're trying to push. That was what I was actually thinking while watching this movie.
Yeah. I don't know. It just the music was off.
Yeah.
It took away from a good music will add to the movie. Fine music you won't think about it at all, but then like this music was bad. It just took me out of the movie.
Yep.
Which is pretty bad when the movie's bad on its own anyway.
Yeah. So my shadiest take, we kind of already went over this a little bit, but so for me it was just another example of how a movie that felt like it was so slow but managed to rush through plots. I felt like good storytelling was sacrificed for lingering shots and locations and effects, and this is actually where I had kind of thought about the kid, because I was thinking, for example, not sure if I missed something, but when did the little brother all of a sudden turn into the kid from The Omen? It was just like,
right.
It was just so sudden, and the movie was visually stunning, but I also felt like there were quite a few times where I could tell it was obvious green screen.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so Mike, who slayed this movie?
I'm gonna say that Storm Reed, who played Meg,
okay,
the main girl. I felt like the girl made the best of a dull screenplay. She did a good job displaying the right emotions for the scene, and she was a hell of a crier.
Sure. Okay.
How about you?
So, yeah, I don't think any of the actors were given much to work with. I feel like they were all set up to not do well, which sucks because so many actors and people I just really like are in this movie.
Yeah.
There's a director I really like and root for. There were so many actors I really like and root for. So it was really disappointing to see that. But I think the one who made the best of a bad situation was Reese Witherspoon. I feel like she was pretty compelling with what she was given to do. Mm-hmm. I think she played that character well. Kind of how she was mean to Meg and all that kind of stuff. And I really liked how she threw some shade at her. There were the few moments I found myself laughing for good reasons because the movie wanted me to. It was often because of her and her performance. Now, that's Reese Witherspoon when she's not the
lettuce monster.
Right. Not that part. But any part where it was actually Reese, I thought she made the best of a bad situation. Whereas, Mindy Kaling, I felt like she just kind of phoned it in. Her performance was completely flat, which is disappointing because she's capable of so much more.
Right. And
Oprah was just there. She just didn't really do much of anything. There's so many scenes in this movie where Oprah's just kind of looking. Yeah. She's not even doing anything. She's just kind of observing what's going on and not contributing anything at all.
Yeah.
And so I thought Reese shined of everyone in this movie.
Who would you give a no ma'am to then on this?
I mean, like I said, I hate to call out kid actors because they have a lot of growing to do, and it's unfair sometimes how much is put on child actors in a movie like this. But the kid who played Charles Wallace, I don't know. I don't want to blame the kid. I kind of even want to blame the thing he was asked to do was just not great.
Beyond what he...
Right. I think it's less his performance and more like any kid in that performance would have come off just not great. Nothing about that performance really struck as very good for me, except his connection with Meg. I thought the connection that the two of them had was probably the most authentic connection of any two characters in the movie. But the performance itself, not great.
Yeah. Well, so for me, it was Zach Galifianakis.
Okay.
I just felt like it's kind of how I feel about him in many roles anymore. It's just like, it just felt like it was Zach Galifianakis being Zach Galifianakis. I don't know.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, he definitely plays that. I don't even know how to describe it, but that kind of comedic relief.
Yeah, and just that highbrow isn't the word I'm looking for, but it's just like, you know, like a, do I look like I'm joking? Or it's just something like that. It's just the same delivery that he gives.
He definitely has a role that he plays, and he sticks to that in a lot of what he does.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, why don't we start wrapping up this movie? What's your rating on this?
This might come as a shock to you, but I'm going to give it 1 reel.
1 reel.
No Henny. No Henny. Just don't see it. There's nothing really good about this one, which is so disappointing. I was looking forward to this movie so much. I didn't think it was going to be like my favorite movie or anything, but I was expecting to at least have a good time and enjoy it, and I just was shocked and appalled at how much I hated this movie.
Oh, that's a strong word.
Hated this movie. Hated going to see it, and would strongly advise anyone considering seeing it not to.
Okay. Well, I'm not as harsh on it. I gave it a 2. But
I'm going to remind you that you gave Best Picture Academy Award nominated movies a 2, and you keep giving these terrible movies 2 reels. Now go on, tell me why.
My thought on this is that so first of all, I say see it at your own risk, but tell us what you thought of it if you do. But for people who enjoy like a visual spectacle and stuff like that, there might actually be some people who get something from this movie. So that's why I just thought I'd say, you know, I don't recommend it, but you should see it for yourself and decide whether or not you liked it or not.
If you love visually beautiful movies, but you hate plot and character development, this is the film for you. That'll look good on a poster.
Ryan Provost of the Real Gay Movie Show. All right. Well, Ryan, do you have any last parting words for this movie?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. So we're batting 1,000 here with the full-on movie reviews and what's coming out. So hopefully, fingers crossed, next week we have a winner.
I think from what I've heard, I think we do. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
All right. So Ryan, before we call it a night, let's get our recommendations out.
Weekly recommendations. We need some theme music for that too. Yeah.
Weekly recommendation. And what's yours?
Okay, so mine is so the other night I just sprained my ankle and I've been laid up on the couch all weekend, which sucked. And one night my neighbor came over and we were going to watch Netflix, and he asked me if I had seen Black Mirror, and I had only seen a couple episodes. So we started watching some, and I'm going to recommend a very specific episode, my favorite episode that I saw. So it's called San Junipero. Have you seen it? So have you seen any of Black Mirror?
Actually, I literally just added it to my Netflix list.
Okay. So my favorite episode is called San Junipero. I don't want to get into many spoilers or anything, because the best part of Black Mirror is all the twists and turns that each of the episodes take. But it's about two women. It's a love story. They find each other, and they've both gone through a lot in their lives and are wrestling with this kind of relationship that they're developing with each other.
Okay.
And to say much more than that would give away some stuff that I don't think I want to give away. So I won't dive too much into it. But the episode itself won an Emmy last year.
Okay.
For, I think it was in the best made for television movie or something like that, or limited series. It won that, and it won another Emmy, I think, for maybe the writing for the episode. So very, very great episode. The series is great, but if we're looking for something with a little gay twist on it, the San Junipero episode of Black Mirror is amazing. It's so good.
Do you know which season?
I believe it's season 3. I want to say 3.
Okay. Well, we'll confirm that and put it in the show notes. So if somebody wants to specifically find that.
Yes. It's outstanding, tearjerker kind of outstanding.
Okay.
For sure. What about you, Mike?
So for me, it's a Netflix series as well, and specifically the entire series. But so it's Grace and Frankie, which is a show that, first of all, it's got Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda in there. There's 2/3 of 9 to 5 right there. So
has Dolly made an appearance yet?
No, and I swear I hope she does.
Ugh.
I hope she does. But so the premise of the show is that these two women, their husbands are lawyers, business partners, but it turns out these guys are gay for each other, and they end up leaving their wives to be with each other, and Grace and Frankie end up moving in as roommates in a beach house, and the two men end up getting a place together. But what's interesting is the relationship between the four of them. They're all still very close. I did actually, ironically, I told my ex-wife about this show, and I said, I think you'd love it, but I don't think you should see it. Yeah, it's just these.
Is your ex-wife more of a Jane Fonda or a Lily Tomlin?
Definitely more of a Lily Tomlin. I mean, she's very eccentric, and like Lily Tomlin, she had a lot of gay friends and stuff like that. There's some kind of energy that really clicked with us. She was into seeing psychics and stuff like that. Very, very much like Lily Tomlin's character. Okay.
Cool. I know a lot of people who love the show. It's really popular among a lot of my friends, and so I think that's a really good recommendation. And I heard that next season RuPaul is going to be on the show. Yeah, so next season RuPaul is going to be in it. This season, which is season 4, Scott Evans, who is Chris Evans' gay brother, has been on the show. Oh, nice. He plays a straight man getting married, and everybody's looking at him like, you're gay! But anyway, so it's a fun show. Check it out. Nice. All right, so Ryan, what do you say we go ahead and call it a wrap on this one? Let's wrap it up. All right, let's wrap it up. So everybody, don't forget, follow us on Twitter @RealGay, and we're on Facebook and Instagram @RealGayMovieShow. I want to ask, if you're listening on iTunes, please take a moment to rate us and subscribe. It'll help the show grow. So for Ryan and myself, we hope you have a real gay day.